Hi, everyone. We are here with Dr. Sasha Shillcutt. So excited to have her on to talk about a very, very exciting new project and something we all need to talk about, which is Brave Boundaries. The book is called Brave Boundaries, Strategies to Say No, Stand Strong, and Take Control of Your Time. We all need these tips. So let me read a little bio about Dr. Shillcutt, and then we'll get into it. So Dr. Sasha Shillcutt, MD, is a tenured and endowed professor and vice chair of strategy in the Department of Anesthesiology at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska. Sasha is the CEO and founder of Brave Enough, which I love, a well-published researcher in cardiac anesthesiology and gender equity, author and international speaker. Sasha has taught thousands of women to achieve work-life control through her courses and conferences. She speaks frequently to executives and leaders on the topics of professional resilience and gender equity. Her TEDx talk titled Resilience, the Art of Failing Forward has been viewed by thousands of people. Her writing has been published in both the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA. She leads conferences and retreats for professional women through her organization, Brave Enough. And now she has a new book called Brave Boundaries. It's being released now. And so I wanted to get right into Brave Boundaries because I think that this is something, first of all, why did you write this book? Like what was the story or the impulse behind it?
So the impulse or the story, I should say, is that, I came out of a really low place of burnout in 2013. And that's all about my first book. And I gained all these skills and awareness, and I started a community, and I really started my passion helping women control their time. And what happened was I removed toxic things from my life in 2013. But I didn't realize that boundaries were so important for me to keep the good in. So I started developing all these good things in my life, but good habits or good, wonderful passions or wonderful people, they can become toxic if you don't have boundaries. And I just thought, okay, I'm good because I'm not burned out anymore because I pushed all this toxicity out and all this overwhelm and over functioning out. But then what I found was like in 2019, I was right back into my place of burnout. I was burning out doing awesome things, but too much of them.
Yes.
And I was struggling because I was like, I actually like all these things that I'm doing. And I like all these people that I'm helping. And how did I get to this point again? Like, this is so embarrassing. And so I actually went to a therapist. And she was like, you need boundaries. And I'm like, boundaries? That's for like people in toxic relationships. And she's like, you need to learn about boundaries. And I'm like, how have I gone all this way, done all this self-work, published a book, done all these things, and have how many degrees? I mean, how many years did we go to school, right? How many times have we studied? And I've taken all these leadership classes, and nobody's taught me that boundaries are not just about keeping bad out, but they're keeping good in. So I started doing my own boundary inventory through this work. And I realized, like, man, I am accessible to everyone 24/7, which is actually the most unhealthy thing you can do. You might think, oh, it's being a good parent, being always available for your kids, or it's being a good doctor, being always available for your patients, or it's being a good entrepreneur, being always available for your clients. But it's actually a terrible thing to be 24/7 accessible. So that's what made me write the book, my own journey in the last 2 years, to set super strict boundaries for myself and learn how much freedom I have in doing that and keeping those positive things positive and not allowing them to become a negative, toxic thing.
I love that. So imagine someone is just starting on this journey, this Brave Boundaries journey. What do they do first? I mean, it seems so overwhelming, and it's kind of has a bad image because, we're, like you said, we're always taught to be kind and nice, and boundaries can be a bad word when you're not used to thinking about them in a good way. So what's the first step and how do you reframe this?
Yeah, great question. And that's how I felt. I thought they were people who were in like difficult, abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So the first thing I have people do is start with your biggest pain point. For most of us women, that is spending any time by ourselves a day. Most people, and I know you are really good at this and you teach this to so many of us, but most people do not spend time with themselves alone every day, really investing in their own wellness and taking their own pulse. They don't do it. So the biggest boundary that I have people set is actually that, is starting out your day by yourself, having some alone time, having some time for wellness, and just touching base with yourself. Like, where are you today? Like, what do you have coming up today? What are your anxieties? And that takes boundaries, because most of us wake up and grab our phone and start the list and read our inbox and check social media and start doing all the things that we have to do. And it takes massive internal boundaries to like wake up and go, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go for a walk for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or I'm going to sit and have some tea or coffee and like think about what's stressing me out. Why do I have anxiety right now? Who do I feel disconnected from? And so the first boundary I have people set that take my class and my courses and read the book is just time with yourself, because that's where you actually can do a boundary inventory and you can go, okay, this area of my life, I have really good boundaries. This area, I have zero boundaries and I need to start. And I take people through what's called the boundary model in the book, and identifying like where you need boundaries, where you're lacking boundaries. And it's almost always around your biggest pain point in your life that's constantly stressing you out, that you try to avoid, that you have a lot of shame around. Boundaries often are the answer to help us.
And you have there's like 4 pillars. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the book, I really talk about, how important it is for you to understand yourself and have boundaries with yourself, have boundaries around your career, and have boundaries around your family, and have boundaries around technology. I mean, our phones, most people don't have phone boundaries. Like when I say that, they're like, what are you talking about? And it's so important to have these boundaries around specific things like technology or your phone or social media, so that you can have a guide to keep you on track, and you can check in with yourself and be like, you know what? Oh my goodness, I have answered every person that has texted me today. Like, why do we think we need to do that? No.
And immediately, right when they text you, you feel like you have to answer. I realized this when I was doing the audiobook for my first book, which was the most terrible experience I can ever imagine. It's like, I felt like I could not speak. Every time I would say a line, they would make me say it again. So that on those 3 days, I had my phone outside of the recording booth. And at the end of 8 hours or 10 hours of recording, I was able to see my phone. And I was able to see how many text messages I get on a daily basis. Almost none of them were emergent, because I told my family, if they needed to reach me emergently, here's a number for the recording studio, because they will get me out of the booth, right? So I look at my phone and I am just shocked at how many little like moms groups, dance, my daughter's dance group. I mean, it is just insane. And I think to myself, all day long, I reply to these right away, during work, before and after meetings. And it was horrific. It really taught me a lesson about building a better system for phone, because the phone can literally take you away from your life. So now I have my phone always on silent, and I make it a point not to reply right away, unless it's an emergent issue. And so that way it takes it off my plate right that minute. And then when I go for a walk, like just like you, I know you've been sharing a little bit about, not in the last few months, about, when I go for a walk, my morning walk is without the phone, but my evening walk, if I have time in between kids' activities, that's my time that I'm walking and I'm replying to all my emails and all my texts. And then I feel like I got to reconnect with the world. And, but these are the things that we learn the hard way. I mean, there's nothing, I feel like this plays into why, there's gender inequities in the workplace. And that's something that you talk about. So touch on that part of boundaries.
So we have this expectation, society has this expectation that when you ask a woman to do something, the default is going to be yes. And if you say no, it's like outside the norm.
Yeah.
And so we have an expectation on ourselves that when someone asks us to do something, that means a yes. And so if it's a no, we just put it off and we leave it in our inbox, or we don't answer the text because we don't want to say no. But then what happens is we wait 2 weeks and now they're asking again. And now we feel guilty that we haven't responded. So then we just say yes.
Yeah.
So we have to, we have to disconnect the expectation that an ask equals a yes. And the way to do that is to have boundaries, like to know these are the 3 things that I'm focusing on this year in my career. If it doesn't fit in these 3 things, I'm putting a boundary around these 3 things. And I'm going to be like, that is awesome that you asked me. I love that you asked me. I'm honored that you asked me. The answer's no. So we have to disconnect someone's asking us, meaning that, oh my gosh, I have to say yes. In fact, a lot of women find themselves angry at people for even asking them. Like, why are they asking me to do this? Don't they know how busy I am? No, they don't. Most people are just worried about their own life. They are not thinking about how they're inconveniencing you by asking. And if you think that you have to say yes, you are coming from a place of zero power, right?
Yeah.
So say thank you, take it as a compliment. Don't get upset that someone's asked you to do something and now you have this burden. Look at it as a compliment and then say, no, thank you. Like, that is a boundary. But if you don't know, like, okay, these are the things I'm going to focus on this year, and I'm going to put a boundary around my time and energy. If it doesn't focus on, if it's not related to this, if you don't know what those are, then you're going to feel like, oh gosh, I guess I should do this, or maybe I should do that. So I talk in the book about really understanding what your priorities are, because that's all a boundary is. A boundary helps you match your priorities with your calendar.
Yeah. And we have to take away this idea that nice people are boundaryless people. And I think that you and I both have experienced that feeling of, you want to be nice. So that feels like when someone asks for mentorship, when someone asks for your time, it feels really difficult. Like the script, is there a script for saying no in a way? Because I know for me, I know you definitely do. And I definitely do get requests for, hey, can I shadow you? Hey, can I go out to lunch with you? Hey, can you be my mentor? Hey, can you help me with this? And I've done this when I didn't know, when I was a student, when I was a resident, I would do those things too. So it's very innocent and it's coming from a great place. But what do you say to them that will kind of not make you look like a cold-hearted person?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because those are the people that you want to help. You want to be that person that helps people that are up and coming, or again, I just have boundaries. Like, I just know I take on 4 like I do 4 of those a year. That's all I have space for.
Yeah.
And when I help someone, when I coach someone, because that's really what it is, for free, or I mentor someone that is a trainee or a student, I always make sure that they come highly prepared. I'm like, I will give you 30 minutes of my time if you come with 3 questions, and you have to type out the questions and send them to me prior, so that we can get the most out of our 30 minutes. But I don't just have 2 hours of my time to just give to people. Like, that will be coming away from something, my family, or it will be coming at a cost to my job. And so I'm sure you have to do the same thing. Like, you just have to set boundaries, and you want to be a woman that sets boundaries, because you then become someone that other people feel safe to share their boundaries with. So many of us have 0 boundaries around email and work times. So I've really worked on that in the last few years, where I just don't, when I leave the hospital, I do not email after I leave the hospital. I don't answer my email after I leave the hospital. I don't check in with that on the weekends, holidays. And a lot of my partners don't understand. They're like, we emailed you. I'm like, I was on vacation.
Yeah.
I don't answer email on vacation.
Yeah.
And some people are going to give you what I call boundary backlash for having boundaries, but most people you empower. They're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I'm going to do that. I don't have to answer vacation emails. I'm like, no, you don't. So you actually end up empowering people when you learn to set boundaries and when you are courageous enough. And here's the thing, like, that's why I called the book Brave Boundaries, because you got to have courage, because this is so anti-culture to say no and to say, I'm not doing that, or I don't do this at night, or I don't do this on the weekends, or I don't speak for free, or whatever you decide to say, or I don't take on unpaid work, which women do all the time.
Yes.
And when you are courageous enough or when you decide to do this, it takes massive courage, but it takes like 20 seconds of brave. And the person goes, okay. And maybe they're a little confused, and then they are on to the next thing. You may have built up this huge narrative, like, oh my gosh, they're never going to ask me again. They're not going to like me. They're going to blackball me on emails or something. They're not. They're going to be on to the next thing. And they're like, oh, she said no.
Yeah.
So you just have to have 20 seconds of courage.
I think that's such a great way to say it. Just be courageous, because it really is about being kind, but also being courageous about it. Okay, this is a hard question. I know that people will want to know this. What about if it's someone really close in your life, like a relative or somebody, that you see every day, a coworker, a boss, someone that you really can't get around? Any tips on how to deal with that?
Yes, this is the hardest thing to do, actually, is to set boundaries with the people that we respect and love. And you might think, well, why do I have to set boundaries with them? Shouldn't they know? Like, shouldn't the people that know me the most just know? And why do I have to tell them? But I can tell you, in my own life, the hardest boundaries I've had to set are with my husband, who I love so much, and I never want to disappoint. With my closest coworkers, it's just hard. With my family, and you have to really look at it as, Brené says, clear is kind. So when you are transparent with someone close to you and you tell them, like, this is a boundary for me. I love our talks at work, but I have to shut my door because I have only an hour to get X done, or else I'm going to have to take work home tonight.
Yeah.
When you express that, you may feel awkward because maybe your coworker stopped to talk to you for 30 minutes and then now it's an hour and you're not getting anything done. But you know what? You are honoring yourself and that person enough to respect your own boundaries and say, I feel comfortable saying this to you. I want you to say this, your boundaries to me.
Yeah.
And just remembering that we cannot expect people to read our minds or know our stress level. And I think so much miscommunication is like that. Like, for example, my husband loves sports. He loves to go to sporting events. He loves to go to big sporting events. He loves to go on sport weekends. I do not enjoy going. I like going to a few, but it's a big deal for me to give up like a whole Saturday to go to a football game like that, or a soccer game. That's like a big deal for me. And sometimes he'll ask me to do something and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do it. But I'm afraid to tell him because I don't want to hurt his feelings. Right. Like, and most of the time now I'll just say, I don't want to do that. I love you, but I will not be fun with you. And you will not enjoy yourself. I know you really want me to go, but I don't want to go. And that has opened up the door for him to say, I know you really want me to go to this fashion event thing tonight and get all dressed up, but I do not want to go to that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my friend,
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so true, because I used to be so scared to say no. My husband's a night owl. He's a physician, but he works he's like tired when he gets home, but like 8:00 comes around and he's awake. And just this week we had concert tickets and they were supposed to be during the pandemic and it was supposed to be a weekend. And it got rescheduled until this Tuesday night. and it was the opening act was going to come on at 9:30 p.m., which is like I would be asleep with the covers. And I practiced that. I said to him, I said, I know, it was going to be a fun date night. However, I don't think that I'm going to be able to function the next day. And surprisingly, I was surprised to hear from him. He said, I kind of feel the same way. Maybe we should try to sell the tickets or whatever. And the funny thing is they didn't sell because they were really good tickets. And he said to me, you know what? You're right. It's probably going to be really late for you. I can handle it. And our daughter really wanted to go to the concert. So they made a daddy-daughter night. And, honestly, Sasha, I felt guilty. I did feel guilty. When they were going, I said, oh, I know I should have gone. And did I make the right decision? Because I think one thing I'm sure that you've realized, and I've realized, is that boundaries are hard. And sometimes they don't feel good even when you're doing it, because it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't feel good. But then on Wednesday, when I got to hear the fun stories, and I felt good because I was rested, like it was all fine. It went fine. And I didn't have to kill myself, and nobody was mad, and everything turned out fine. And I think boundaries like that are so huge for, relationships, because then, just like you said, now he has the leeway to say, hey, I really don't want to go to that event.
Right.
Is that okay? And I have to respect that, because I can't have it one way and not have it for him as well. So I think that's a huge, huge thing. How does this help with burnout? That's like a big issue for women and actually everyone. What can you do with your boundaries, or what are some examples of boundaries that you can create to help with burnout?
So one of the things the first thing is, just trying to set a boundary around what you do in the morning, that you actually don't wake up and start working. I mean, so many people, I do this, my default is to wake up and start working. And start going down the list and doing all the things and emptying the dishwasher and going and doing this before I leave for work. It's crazy. And so a boundary in the morning around time with yourself is huge, because you feel more in control. You feel centered. You feel like you are not rushed in the morning. So that's the first boundary that I have people set when they're totally burned out. And then the second thing is I have people write down all of the things they do in their job that they get paid for. And then on the other column, all of the things that they're doing that they don't get paid for. And many times the things that people are doing and giving their time and are on their calendar that they don't get paid for are greater than the list they get paid to do. And then I have us go down that list, and I'm like, what is this? Tell me about this. Why are you doing this? And they're like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I just started doing this, and now everyone expects me to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is unpaid volunteer work or unpaid work that someone at work has just given you and you've just taken on or you've gotten involved in. And so when they see that on paper, they realize that they're not weak. They're not just a weak person or nothing's wrong with them. They are overcommitted and they have been given unpaid work that they have taken on and they have to give back.
Yeah.
And so we start whittling down that list. And sometimes it's volunteer stuff with our kids or with our community. And I'm like, do you love this? And they're like, no, I don't love it, but I don't know how to stop doing it. And so we get a plan together on how to set boundaries around the unpaid work and moving that off our plate. And that really helps empower women because they go, you know what? I said no to this person and they still like me. Or I said, I'm not doing this anymore. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. And they still let me work with them. Or I said no to my boss, or I said, I've done this for 3 years. I'm not going to do this anymore. And he or she was like, okay, we get it. So it's very empowering when that happens.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just thinking that's so true because it feels empowering when you say no to something that you hated and that you didn't want to be involved with in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the other thing that I think is really important is because a lot of us have families and so many women are like, come to me for coaching and they're like, I need to learn how to set boundaries at work, but they don't realize that they need home boundaries, and boundaries with our kids are super important. And many times we don't set them because we work and we think, oh, we're already gone. We're already not there enough. So we're just going to be there for our kids whenever they need us. But you want to be a person that models boundaries for your children because you want your kids to have boundaries. You know, you want your kids to be able to say, you know what, Mom, I'm exhausted and I know that we have this dinner thing tonight, but I've been at school and soccer or dance and basketball and I just kind of want to stay home tonight.
Yeah.
You know, you want your kid to be able to express that to you. And the only way they're going to feel comfortable doing that is when they see you doing that.
What's an example of a boundary that you've set with your children, so people can get examples of like how, like, what have you done that's really helped you?
So two things I would say, my kids know when I'm need time alone. You know, sometimes I have a very stressful day and I will come home and
Like
I just
today.
won't, I just honestly won't be in a place where I can even engage with them until I have a moment. And I used to just, you know, when they're little, they just run to the door and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you know,
Overwhelmed.
and
Yeah.
now I'm like, you guys, I need like 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
they know like I'm going to this certain place in my bedroom, not to bother me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is around activities. You know, I have 4 kids and my oldest I just took to college, but my other 3 are at home and they're super busy. And we could be doing something every night of the week. So we kind of have this boundary around having one night off on the weekend where we are just at home. And so if
That's
they're like,
smart.
I want to go to this football game, I'm like, great, Saturday night is our night at
Yeah.
home, you know, or I want to go to this thing Saturday night with my friends. That's great. I want you to stay home Friday night. Because they just get overwhelmed and
Yeah.
overworked. You know, our kids just, our society is so busy, activities. And so we kind of have set a boundary around that for our family. And honestly, I think our kids like it. Like, I honestly feel like sometimes they'll even text me, so-and-so is asking me to come over. Will you tell them no?
I love that.
Because they are like tired and they just
Yeah.
want to stay home. So we kind of have an unwritten rule that one weekend night we are just home.
I like that idea. That's a great takeaway because as my kids are a little bit younger than yours, but just like one's entering high school, one's in middle school, and they are overscheduled to the max. And I think that having some downtime for them is important because even on the weekends, the weekend days become very busy. And having maybe a rule to set boundaries because my kids I think it's hard for them to know what their boundaries are until they're so exhausted that they're cranky and they're just overstressed. For example, the other thing is, what about kids and devices? Do you have ideas for boundaries that they can set for themselves that, I mean, just like us, I think it's easier in a way for us because we still grew up in a generation where there was a life without the phone. For them, it's like their homework is on their phone, their friends are on their phone. They're basically everything that they would ever want to do in their lives is on this little device or this computer or the iPad. So what are things that you would advise to a family that was trying to kind of build boundaries around electronics?
This is hard. I mean, we've done so many different things and at different stages of their life, but it's really hard. And I would say we do have a few things like in the car, when we're all in the car, why we are not on our phone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, we can take a car trip for 30 minutes, all of us together, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
On our way to dinner, on our way to a restaurant, on our way somewhere, off our devices. Let's talk. Right.
Yeah.
So let's like look around, experience
Yeah.
what's happening around us and talk. And then dinner, obviously is a big one, meals, no phones at meals. And, you know, I've heard people say, like, we've tried to do the things like, okay, you can have your phone for 2 hours a day, or, oh, you can have your phone for whatever. And we set these limits to, especially my 12-year-old's phone during the summer.
Yeah.
But then I've also heard recently, and we've been trying this, which is kind of fun, like, we're going to have a screen-free hour tonight. Or we're going to have a free, no screens for 2 hours tonight. Everybody come downstairs. And at first everyone's like, oh, but then we do it and it's kind of fun. So it's almost like the reverse. Instead of setting the timer, it's like creating no screen hours with the family.
Yeah, I love that.
And I kind of like that almost more, because then it's like, it doesn't seem as limiting as you only get your phone for an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it feels more doable. What have you learned now that you are doing your second book? This is your second book. And have you built different boundaries with this book as you go on the interview circuit, as you go on the promotional circuit? What have you learned? Because this is a selfish question for me, but I think that I'm always trying to figure out how I can do things better, how I can manage my stress. I mean, it's all about that internal stress and happiness balance that we're always trying to get.
Oh my gosh, I know it is. It's the thing is that I kind of have a limit to how much travel or speaking I'm going to do. I just have kind of created a limit for myself. When my first book came out, I felt like I had to say yes to everything, because I had no, history of publishing. I didn't know, I was an unknown.
Yeah.
And I was all over the place. And, this year, I'm really trying hard. Like, I just got asked yesterday to write an article today, but it had to be due before tomorrow. And before, I would have stayed up all night. And now I'm like, no, there's no way.
Yeah.
I'm like,
good.
Nope, can't do this. And it was a big, magazine, but I was like, I can't do it. That's ridiculous to ask me to turn something over in 24 hours. So I definitely feel like I've kind of like, with my first book, I almost felt like I was like, so I just said yes to everything. And this, I almost feel like, I told my husband last night, it's like I have a little bird and I'm just, letting it free.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I'm putting it out into the world.
Yes.
And yes, if anybody asks me to go on a podcast, I love podcasts. I love doing this with you. I'm doing it. I'll talk to anybody. But like book clubs and things, I'm being really strict about. Like, if you're going to buy books, I'm there. But if you're not going to buy books, I'm not just going to host book clubs. I did a ton of those for free, and some of them 50 people would come and some of them 5 people would come. And I'm not doing that this time.
No.
So I'm just putting my little bird out into the world and hoping that the PR that I am doing, like things like this that I love doing, which I mean, I like to spend time with you, even if it's an hour. That is fun for me, but I'm not killing myself like I did for the first book.
I want to tell you a funny story. So right before my book came out, it was during the pandemic, and and of course this was a male physician and a great guy, right? He said, "Oh, I just came out with a book. I'm going to give you some advice." And so I said, "Great." He said, "Create a empty template schedule for the week of your book launch and send it out to all of the places and let them just fill it in. Just instead of scheduling, just kind of create an empty schedule and let people fill it in. And of course, if you have pre-scheduled interviews, you can block it out." So I said, great idea. It was the worst advice ever for me, because I felt completely out of control. There was a schedule that existed that I didn't know anything about, and it kept getting fuller and fuller with people that I didn't have the chance to say yes or no, because they just had the link to schedule. And all of a sudden I found myself with a full schedule from morning to night. And without me really having the chance to say, yes, no, I need a break, or I just followed his advice and thought, well, maybe naturally there'll be breaks here and there, and it was torture, literally torture.
That sounds horrendous.
It was like the anti-boundary. It was and it's like it's almost like when you were in residency and when you would have cases added on, or you'd be on call and there'd be like admission after admission. And I just kept feeling like, oh my God, another one. Oh my gosh, I got to do another Instagram live, because it was all Instagram lives at that point in the pandemic. Everything was, virtual. It was Zoom and Instagram live, and it was terrible.
Oh. That is terrible.
And, it was nice in a way that we didn't have to travel and there was no chance to
Right.
kind of do the book. But I realized that was the worst. And of course, see, boundaries are different for everyone. This obviously worked for someone and it was super successful in his launch, but that doesn't work for everyone. And so I had to learn.
No.
Okay. So this time I realized that interviews, not like the interview that we have together, we're conversational, but there are interviews that take a lot of your energy. And I realize that that's something that I need like downtime before and after. And this is like something I never really knew. I just think, it's all new to me. So I want to ask you a question that was in your book. What is the danger of thinking, if not me, who?
The danger of that is it feeds your ego. And you're making decisions based on your ego, which is a very bad place to make decisions. So, it feeds this kind of like, oh, I'm the only one that can do this job. I have to do this because I've always done it. No one can do it better than I can, or as good as I can achieve this. And it just feeds your ego. And so you may think you're actually serving people and being helpful, but really what you're doing is you're just pumping up your ego, and you are creating this false narrative that you have to do this, or you can't take vacation because nobody could do this job or work. And what happens is all of a sudden you start seeing your value as a human being in what you do for others, or how others view you as helpful, or how others view you as valuable. And that's not how you should measure your value. You should measure your value for who you are as a human being, a child of God, in my opinion, and that you're a human. And so not for what you do for others. I mean, if that's where you're getting your affirmation, if that's where you're getting your self-love and your confidence is what you can do for others, or how valuable you think you are for others, it's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah. So why do women especially end up in this place? Like, what is wrong in the way we're teaching women as they grow up or move through the ranks?
Well, I think we're teaching women, which the way that we've taught women for decades, honestly, is that you have value for how helpful you are to men.
Yeah.
And it's just true. And so we just think like, oh gosh, this person noticed me and I'm helpful and he's given me all these jobs, or she's given me all these jobs. So I'm just going to say yes and be so grateful, even though I'm not getting paid. Someday, maybe somebody will look at me and say, oh, we've noticed you've done all this work and now we're going to pay you. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, I
So you
totally
have
agree.
to separate your worth to human beings for what you can give and do for others. And you have to be willing to disappoint nice people, because your wellness is the most important thing. If you don't believe that your well-being is more important than pleasing others, you will not be comfortable with setting boundaries. And anyone can set boundaries. It's not a race. You don't have to have a specific personality. It's a journey. And that's why in the book, I really go through like all the different steps.
I think this is such a huge thing for women, especially because I think we are trying to do things for everyone. We're trying to do things for for doctors, it's our patients, for our clients that we coach, for the people in our lives. And it's really hard if you don't have boundaries to feel fulfilled inside and to feel actually have space for yourself if you don't actually build these boundaries. So this is super, super important. Tell us a little bit about this book writing journey, and then, just to give people a chance to, where can they find the book, or can they find you, where can they learn more, what do you have coming up, all of that.
So you can follow my journey at becomebraveenough.com. I send out a Friday newsletter. It's short, it's sweet, and I try to give you a little encouragement every Friday. You can find the book on Amazon or wherever books are sold. It's called Brave Boundaries. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Become Brave Enough. I would say the thing that it has really taught me in this journey is it's made me realize how much I was so accessible to everyone because it made me feel good. It made me feel good when people wanted my advice. It made me feel good when people I thought wanted to be my friend, but really they just needed something from me, and that fulfilled me. And now I say yes to people when I want to do it, regardless of what they can, the praise that they give me or anything. It's like, I'm just doing it because I want to. And I had to learn that the hard way by getting completely overwhelmed and by being burned out yet again, and having to learn to set boundaries and to keep good things in my life good and not let them become too much.
Okay. Last question. And by the way, that was so nice. I was just thinking about the first Brave Enough conference that I went to. And I thought to myself, like, how is this woman staying sane? Because literally you would like walk through the hallway and people would be like physically like pulling at you. And
I know, but do you know, remember what you did for me? You were the sweet. See, you had like insight. I was like, oh, she is my people, because you saw that and you went and like got me sparkling water and like brought me something to drink, because you could tell that I was like, oh my gosh, like that is insight. That's like really special that you had that insight.
I mean, I just thought
all the other people did not.
I was just thinking like, I'm not a hugger at all. And even if you are, like, there were people literally like had so little boundaries that they were like grabbing your arm or like pushing you in a way. And I'm like, I can't even imagine how she's staying sane through this. So last question. Give us I know every day is different, but give us a peek behind the curtain of Sasha's life. Like, what does it look like from the morning to the night?
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm an early riser, so I normally get up around 5-ish, 5:15, and I go for a walk. If it's in the winter, I can't walk outside because I live in Nebraska where it's cold. I don't live where you live, where it's beautiful all the time.
But it's really hot. So
it's really hot. I know. So it's wonderful here now, but I like to go outside. And if I don't do that, then I go downstairs and I stretch for a long time. I'm like an oldie. I got to stretch my body. I wake up and I'm so stiff. So I stretch, and then I do some weights on the days that I can't get outside. And then I'm normally out the door by 6:30, pretty early. And I go to work and I'm in the operating room, typically by 7 a.m. I'm in pre-op seeing my patient. On a normal day, hopefully I'm home by, 5:30. And I have pretty strict boundaries around my nights. Probably I do like 2 night things a month. So, because I take calls still. So I'm an early bed person. I'm like you. I like to drink my tea before bed and get in bed. I wind down and shut off everything at 8 p.m. And then I'm typically asleep by 9, unless I'm also running kids a lot at night, which I know you are too, to and fro. I feel like an Uber driver. So I probably try to get home like latest time 8:30. If it's going to be super late, I'll even hire kids to pick up my kids, like high school kids, because I'm like, they don't have to get up at 5. I do. So I have a lot of help. I don't want to say, oh, I do all these things. But at night, I normally get on and do work business stuff after dinner from like 6 to 7 or 7 to 8. I'm on doing Brave Enough stuff. And then Saturdays and Sunday mornings, I get up really early and I do Brave Enough work. And then I try to have the rest of the day, like Saturday and Sunday, free for my family.
I love it. That's a great schedule. I mean, it's busy and I get you with the late night. I don't understand why they end practices at 9. I was like, I want to be asleep by 9. So I'm with you on the asking for help. Like, I think that's really great part of, having boundaries. So thank you, Sasha, for being here. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited for people to get their hands on this, because I think it's really a life-changing concept for so many of us to build a life that feels good and that we're not asking for permission. I just put up a tweet. It was somebody else's tweet. that said, I'm entering my villain era. And then it says like my villain era, actually asking for the things I want and need. And that's literally a woman's villain era, right? Like
I love
actually,
it. I love it. Yes.
so I felt like that really encompasses a lot of what we talked about. It's really not a bad thing to have boundaries. And I can't wait to see you on the circuit. And Become Brave Enough is the website, correct?
Yes.
We'll put
yes.
all the links to the
Awesome.
book and to find you all below. Thank you again and have a great day. I know you have a busy, busy day. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.